Once upon a time, in the heart of East Asia, there was a mighty empire, the Celestial Empire, also known as China. This was a land steeped in history, bound by ancient wisdom, sprawling landscapes, and deep-rooted traditions, but by trade, not by armies, but by opium. It was a civilization that had stood the test of millennia. Its emperors admired across the globe for their grandeur and authority. But even the mightiest dragons can be struck down, and China's power would soon be challenged, not by an internal rebellion, but by the formidable forces of Europe. This is the story of how a nation that had once been at the center of the world would fall under the weight of foreign imperialism. How it was invaded not by swords, but soon the drug took hold, and millions of Chinese citizens were becoming addicted. The economy faltered, families were torn apart, and social unrest spread like wildfire. The once mighty dragon was starting to show signs of weakness. With their superior weaponry and naval power, the British inflicted a humiliating defeat on the Chinese. It was a crushing blow. The great Celestial Empire, once a symbol of stability and power, was now at the mercy of foreign forces. And thus, the age of European imperialism in China began. Though the country did not yet realize how deep the wound would be, the war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Nanking in 1842, a document that would forever alter the course of Chinese history. The first glimpse of the dragon's weakness, it all began in the early 1800s, when the Western world was looking for something that China had in abundance: tea, silk, and porcelain. These treasures from the East were highly coveted, and European merchants were eager to strike deals with China. In the late 19th century, the Boxer Rebellion erupted, a violent uprising aimed directly at foreign powers, Chinese Christians, and anyone seen as a symbol of Western influence. The Boxers, a secret society, called for the expulsion of all foreigners and the restoration of China's ancient traditions. They believed the foreign presence had cursed their land. The Qing dynasty, too, realized it couldn't survive forever under such pressure. For the first time in decades, the Chinese people fought back against the foreign invaders. They besieged Beijing and killed foreign nationals, including diplomats, missionaries, and soldiers. But their victory was short-lived. In response, an 8-nation alliance, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, Russia, the United States, Italy, and Austria-Hungary, marched into China. The centuries of foreign imperialism had left China scarred, but they had also awakened a deep, unyielding sense of nationalism. The Chinese people, despite enduring immense suffering and loss, found ways to adapt and resist. The scars of the opium trade, the unequal treaties, and the foreign spheres of influence would remain long after the foreign powers had gone. But the desire for a strong, independent China never died. The lessons of humiliation and oppression were seared into the collective memory of the Chinese people. From the ashes of imperialism would rise a new China, one that would ultimately reclaim its place on the world stage. The foreign powers crushed the rebellion with brutal force. It was a time of crisis, but also a time of awakening. The Qing dynasty was forced to pay massive indemnities to the victorious foreign powers, and once again, China's sovereignty was further eroded. In 1949, after years of revolution and struggle, the People's Republic of China was born. The dragon may have been wounded, but it was never truly broken, and now it roars again. The dragon that had once been oppressed by foreign forces was now reborn strong, proud, and determined to reclaim its destiny. It is a story that shapes the world today. It reminds us of the dangers of unchecked imperial power and the resilience of those who are oppressed. And while the dragon has risen, it continues to watch the world, knowing that its own history can never be forgotten. Because sometimes the greatest empires are not built through power alone, but through the lessons learned from those who sought to break them. And though the scars of the past remained, China would never forget the lessons learned during the century of humiliation. The Boxer Rebellion was both a spark of nationalism and a testament to the growing divide between China and the world around it. The revolutionaries, many of them inspired by Western ideas, sought to overthrow the ancient monarchy. One of the most prominent of these figures was Sun Yat-sen, a visionary who dreamed of a modern, unified China. As China's weakness became apparent, other European powers, along with the United States, smelled opportunity. The Chinese Empire, which had endured for over 2,000 years, was replaced by the Republic of China. It was a turning point, but not one that offered immediate peace. The country was still in turmoil, divided between competing factions, foreign influences, and warlords. One by one, nations began to carve up China, demanding trade rights, territorial concessions, and special privileges. In the aftermath of the Opium War, the so-called unequal treaties flooded China. These treaties, signed under duress, stripped China of its sovereignty and forced the empire to cede vast portions of its territory and grant foreign nations special privileges. But there was a problem. China didn't really need anything from Europe. These foreign-controlled areas were bustling with Westerners, their businesses thriving, while Chinese merchants suffered under the weight of trade imbalances. European officials and missionaries spread their influence, introducing new ideas, new religions, and new ways of life to the Chinese population. Yet, for many, it felt as though the heart of China was being ripped out, replaced with the foreign ways of distant lands. The Qing dynasty, which ruled over China at the time, was self-sufficient and saw no reason to open up trade with foreign lands. China had the goods, and Europe had nothing China wanted. He was fierce, patriotic, and determined to save his country from this foreign poison. Lin took drastic measures, seizing and destroying large stocks of opium and declaring war on the British trade. But Britain, not known for backing down, responded with the power of its navy and military. To balance the scales, the British, always inventive and hungry for profit, hit upon a brilliant and dark idea. They would introduce a product to the Chinese market that would give them an advantage in trade: opium. Grown in British-controlled India, opium was not only highly addictive, but incredibly lucrative. Slowly, the British began smuggling it into China. At first, the Chinese authorities were unaware of the growing opium problem, the clash of two worlds, the First Opium War. In 1839, a man named Lin Zexu, a Chinese official, was tasked with addressing the opium crisis. What followed was the First Opium War, a brutal conflict that would change China's destiny forever. The treaty forced China to open 5 of its ports to foreign trade, pay a heavy indemnity, and, perhaps most symbolically, cede the island of Hong Kong to Britain. The unequal treaties, the world divides, but the British were not the only ones circling the dragon. Soon, Shanghai, Canton, and other coastal cities became centers of European trade. But the dragon didn't lie down quietly. Across the land, from the smoldering ruins of cities to the farthest corners of the empire, resentment began to grow. The Boxer Rebellion, the dragon strikes back. As the century turned, a new nationalist fervor began to build within China. The rebellion became a symbol of defiance. The aftermath was even more humiliating for China. The fall of the dragon. The end of the Qing dynasty as the years passed. The Qing dynasty, already weakened by foreign exploitation and internal strife, began to crumble under its own weight. In 1911, after decades of foreign dominance and internal decay, the Qing dynasty finally fell. The legacy of the dragon's fall. The dragon, though wounded, was far from dead. The legacy of European imperialism in China is a story of exploitation, but also of resilience. The dragon's resurgence as the world moved into the 20th century. The rise of modern China became inevitable. Today, as the world watches China rise once again, it is a reminder that no empire, no matter how vast, can hold back the tides of time and change forever. The end. Or is it? The story of China's struggle with European imperialism is not just one of the past.